Welcome everyone to the virtual office hours. As many of you know by now, my name is John Fia. I teach American history here at Messiah College. I chair the history department. And today we are going to talk a little bit about historical blogging. As some of you know, I write a blog called The Way of Improvement Leads Home. I've been blogging. I think The Way of Improvement Leads Home is now coming up on its fourth, maybe fifth year anniversary. I'm going to have to check that in June. It will be either 4 or 5 years old. I think it's 4. I know that we're about a year younger than Paul Harvey's blog, Religion in American History, and that's where I got my start blogging. What we thought we would do is I'm always being asked questions about blogging and about the blog. So we want to do maybe this week and next week, and who knows how far this will go, sort of frequently asked questions about blogging at The Way of Improvement Leads Home, or historical blogging in general. So we're gonna put some questions up on the screen. Many of these questions I get asked over and over again, and we will try to respond to them. And once we get this up on the blog and you watch it, I hope that you will use the comments section to raise some other questions. If you have some questions that I haven't answered here in this virtual office hours, we will try to respond to them in a future episode. So or you can email me at jfea@messiah.edu. We'll have that up on the screen as well. Email me your questions, respond in the comments, Facebook me your questions, and we'll try to get them in the series for the next week. So I hope you enjoy this. I hope you learned something about historical blogging in the process. So how did I start my blog? I guess it started when I published my first book, which was called The Way of Improvement Leads Home. And so it was about this, some of you know, it was about this 18th century journalist, Presbyterian minister, son of a yeoman farmer, who got caught up in the American Revolution, named Philip Vickers Fithian. And the title of the book became the title of the blog. I think it was someone from the University of Pennsylvania Press who said to me, I think I was asking, how can we publicize the book? How can we get it out there? It may have been someone in the marketing or publicity department at Penn Press, or maybe it was someone else. It's getting a little blurry now. But they said, why don't you start a blog? You'd probably be good at it, and you can blog about the book and get people interested in, in the book, link it to Facebook and so forth. So I said, sure, why not? I had this book out. It was my first book. I wanted people to buy it. I wanted people to read it. So I started the blog, and I decided to just simply name it after the title of the book, since at that time the only reason I was going to do the blog was to promote the book. So if you go back into the archives of The Way of Improvement Leads Home, you will find many of the first posts were largely posts just specifically about the book or the life of Philip Vickers Fithian, and it was a very, very narrow slice of material that I was working with. Eventually, like any blogger, it's very gratifying when you notice that people are actually reading your blog, and you see that people are interested in what you have to say. So I started to expand it a little bit. I think we eventually put the subtitle on there, and I'm not going to remember it off the top of my head, but I think it was something along the lines of The Way of Improvement Leads Home, Reflections at the Intersection of History, Religion, Politics, and Academic Life. I think I may have gotten that right. And then we began to expand a little bit more. The readership began to grow. And we started, reflecting on things that were going well beyond the actual book. And then as I began to write and edit more books, it became a great platform to promote my work. I also, frankly, in the early years, if you will, and when we talk about a blog being 4 years old, that's ancient history in the world of blogging. Most blogs don't last this long. But in the early years, too, I often thought about the blog as simply a way of telling people who I knew, friends, family members, and others, giving them updates as to what I was doing. So, if I would go speak somewhere or something like that, I'd write it on the blog. And it was just a way of communicating. Pretty soon, more and more people began to read it, and it sort of took off from there. What is my philosophy of blogging? That's a great question. I get asked it a lot. Again, as I said in the answer to the last question, I started off just book blogging, right, talking about my book. But as things began to expand and I began talking about other subjects, I really sort of got into it. I was, as a young man, young college student, I was really into journalism. I actually thought I was going to pursue a career as a newspaper reporter or a journalist. I was editor of my, sports editor of my high school newspaper. I was always sort of coming up as a kid even with, you know, different little newspapers and newsletters. I would sometimes stick them in neighbors' mailboxes, you know, about like different things that were happening, who won this kickball game, or, you know, something like that. So I was always interested in sort of news, information, and then of course with the rise of the internet, it really sort of satisfied my interest in those areas. So I love reading. I was reading things online on a daily basis anyway, and I love being able to write in the sort of short, quick, concise format that a blog offers. So I started doing that, and I started blogging a little bit more regularly. I originally was doing maybe a couple posts a week, then I started doing a post a day, and then I started reading other blogs, and I started developing, well, what does my blog want to look like? One of the people that inspired me, or that I've learned a lot from and tried to follow in terms of philosophy, is Andrew Sullivan, who blogs at The Daily Dish. And Andrew, you know, is a full-time blogger. I mean, he puts up a post maybe every 15 or 20 minutes. And, you know, there's no way as a, you know, I have a real life too. Not that Andrew doesn't, but I have a, you know, I have a job that I have to do. So there was no way that I was going to do that. And I wasn't particularly interested in doing that for, you know, full-time all day. But I was thinking, well, what if I could get information out there a little more rapidly than other people in the historic or academic or religious studies kind of community? You know, what if I could be a sort of go-to source for that? Now, that might be requiring writing a post maybe every couple of hours, or every 2 or 3 hours, or an hour and a half, and so forth. So it's a modified Andrew Sullivan model, but that's my philosophy. You'll notice when you read my blog that most of my posts are simply links to other posts that I give a little excerpt or a taste of, and then maybe I add some of my own commentary, maybe a couple sentences here or there. The philosophy behind that is this, if I can, and I think this is a general philosophy of blogging. If you keep the material moving, if you continue to give your readers new material, people are going to come back, and you're going to be developing a community of readers. Right now, about 60% of my readers, 65-70% of my readers on any given day are return visitors. So people come back to read and to see what I'm going to post for that particular day. And that's, again, very gratifying. And then, you know, once you get people coming back, you may also notice it's maybe once a week or so, maybe once or twice a week, maybe once every 2 weeks, I'll write something original. I'll put something up there where I'm responding or reacting to a particular issue in the news or issue related to the historical profession. But my philosophy is, you know, if I get people coming back every single day, checking the links, and of course everything's connected with Facebook and Twitter, then when I have something that I really want to say, people are there, and I have a built-in audience for that. So that's the way I've been approaching it, and so far I think it's been fairly successful. One of the big questions I always get is, how much time do you devote to the blog? You know, especially if days when I do 10 or 12 posts a day, someone will say, you know, why, you know, how do you do this and still write and still teach and still do all the things you do as a department chair and have a family and, you know, all these kinds of things. I don't know, maybe it's just the way I'm wired, but it's really not that much work. Usually what I do is I write blog posts for the week, usually early in the mornings or late at night. It takes me about an hour, maybe sometimes an hour and a half, depending on the length of the post that I'm working on. And then I set them off on timers. So, you know, it appears that I'm just sitting at my desk all day, sending out blog posts. But actually those posts, many of those posts have already been written 2, 3, 4, sometimes a week before they've been set on timers. Now, of course, when news happens or something happens within the profession, or I need to address something, you know, I'll dive in and do something that's more up to date or immediate in terms of what I post. But usually about an hour, hour and a half a day. Sometimes maybe a little bit longer, sometimes a little less, it's not really that, I don't really see it that taxing because I enjoy doing it, and if I continue to enjoy doing it, I'll continue with the blog. Once I stop enjoying it, I'll probably stop or limit my posts considerably. So yeah, it requires work in many ways, and maybe I'll talk about this in light of in light of a future question. In many ways, I have to see it as part of my professional development or my professional life. The blog is something that I produce on a daily basis, and I need to factor that into my sort of work time. And future questions, maybe I'll respond to how the college where I teach perceives that, or how I see this as part of my profession as a historian or a public historian or a public intellectual or something along those lines.